Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. We return to the Kurukshetra battlefield. Abhimanyu has been killed. We all know how he was killed. He knew how to enter Chakravyuha, a kind of formation that Guru Drona had set up on that day. He knew how to enter, but he did not know how to get out of it. The Pandavas said there was no worry. Once he enters the formation, other Pandavas would join and help him. But what happened was, at the door was standing that day Jayadratha. And Jayadratha had a boon from Lord Mahadev, Bhagavan Mahadev. And the boon was this, that on a certain day he would be able to defeat all the Pandavas except Arjuna. And Arjuna that day was not in the battlefield. That is why Abhimanyu had to enter Chakravyuha, or that formation that Guru Drona had created. And Jayadratha was standing at the entrance. Abhimanyu had gone inside, and the Pandavas tried to enter. Jayadratha defeated them all. So no one could enter, and Abhimanyu was trapped inside. 7 Maharathis, including the great Karna, Guru Drona himself, Ashwasthama and others, all surrounded him. And the child warrior, he was the one who kept fighting with them. And of course, how long could he fight? And finally he succumbed. And that was the story of Ashwasthama's death. That was how he was killed. And all those 7 people who were involved in that killing have been condemned by Vyasa, have been condemned in Vyasa Mahabharata as the killers, as sinners. They have all been condemned in Vyasa Mahabharata as sinners of the worst kind. They had committed the foulest of all sins. And we know that Arjuna had singled out Jayadratha as the person responsible for his son's death, and the following day he killed him. That story we know, and we had made some reference to the story earlier. We have made some reference to the story earlier. Now, see, in Sara Mahabharata the story is not the same. There is some difference, and there is a substantial difference, in fact, not just some. And the story is this: who was the person who orchestrated the killing of Abhimanyu? It was Bhagavan Krishna himself. It was Krishna who had organized that killing, as it were. And what is the story? The day Abhimanyu was to be killed, the night before Abhimanyu was killed, Krishna had a dream. And in that dream, he saw a young warrior rushing towards him with Vaishnava Chakra, trying to attack him. He was scared. The dream had completely sort of shattered him. He did not know what the dream really meant. So he went to Sahadeva and asked Sahadeva the meaning of the dream, what it really signified. Sahadeva said that you do not have to worry, because you are the Lord of the universe, you are the doer of things, and you are the master of everything, you are the creator. Now who can harm you? You are the creator, you are the destroyer. Who is there to be able to harm you? Don't worry. But the meaning of the dream is this. Sahadeva told Krishna that before he took avatar, he had asked goddess Ugratara to be born in the world as Yashoda's daughter. And soon after her birth, she would return to her heavenly abode. And she had asked her son, Adi, to stay in the world. Now, Adi said that I do not want to stay in the world. I am a commander in the army of the Devas. So why should I go and live in the world? What work do I have in the mortal world? But since you were saying that Krishna had told him that he should stay in the mortal world for 14 years. So Adi said that I cannot say no to you. So since you want me to be there in the mortal world for 14 years, I will have to be there. But please remember, as soon as my 14 years are over, I must return to Swarga. And if I do not return, I will kill both Arjuna and Hari. And Abhimanyu was going to complete, Adi was Abhimanyu, and Abhimanyu was going to complete his 14 years on that day, the day he was actually killed. And as we know, the dream came to Krishna the night before. So this was a kind of reminder to Krishna that his time had come and he had to return. This was not, Abhimanyu did not do this, he did not remind Krishna, but this is what happened. Abhimanyu had forgotten about his, Abhimanyu had no memory of his previous existence. I am not saying that Abhimanyu was instrumental in Krishna's dream, but the dream came. So Krishna and Krishna himself did not probably understand the meaning of the dream, and he asked Sahadeva. And this is what Sahadeva said. He said that goddess Ugratara had given Krishna protection. She was born as the daughter of Yashoda, and we know that that she was taken by Vasudeva to Devaki's. She was taken to Vasudeva to Kansa's prison, and Kansa tried to kill her, and she escaped. So that story we all know. And so Sahadeva said that Ugratara had given you protection, and now the time has come for Adi to return. And the dream was only a reminder to Krishna that Abhimanyu's time had come. So Krishna was wondering, if Arjuna would be there in the battlefield, then how would Abhimanyu be killed? The father would give him protection, and Abhimanyu himself was a great warrior, and with Arjuna around, who would defeat Arjuna so that he would be able to kill Abhimanyu? He would not die if Arjuna is there on the battlefield. So Sahadeva said there is a way. There is the king of the Mlechas who had organized, who had organized an army, and what Krishna could do was to take Arjuna to meet the king of Mlechas, the army of Mlechas, and that way Arjuna would be away from the Kurukshetra battlefield, and with Guru Drona's Chakravyuha, there will be no option for the Pandavas but to ask Abhimanyu to enter, and Abhimanyu would get trapped and be killed. So this kind of, he did not say all those things in great detail, but he simply said that once Arjuna is taken away from the battlefield, it will be easier. The Abhimanyu's death would be a real possibility, or it would be possible to kill Abhimanyu. And he told him how Arjuna could be taken away. Now, when the Pandavas, that was the last hour of the night, the following morning they would have to go to the battlefield to face the Chakravyuha of Guru Drona. And when the Pandavas were thinking about, when the Pandavas were, when the Pandavas were considering all these, they were thinking over all these things as to what to do, Krishna arrived. And Krishna told them that, look, I have a news to give you. The king of Mlechas has assembled huge army, and it is quite possible they might attack Varunavanta. So it is important for Arjuna and me, it is important for Arjuna to go and fight them and to prevent them from doing any harm to Varunavanta. So the Pandavas agreed, but Yudhishthira was worried. Would Arjuna be able to do it alone? Krishna said that there was no problem. If it became necessary, then he himself would fight. He had made a promise to his elder brother Balaram that he would not participate in the Mahabharata war, in the war between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. But he was not constrained not to fight against any other enemy. So both of them went there. When both of them went there, they had to be there for the whole day, so that there was time for Abhimanyu, there was time for the Kaurava army to kill Abhimanyu. They had to be away for the whole day. And Krishna managed that. When they went there, Arjuna saw a huge, really huge army of asuras, demons. And Arjuna told Krishna that he was not worried about the size of the army or who were the persons who were going to face him. But he had never heard of something called Jalandhara Vyuha. He didn't know about that formation at all. He said he had never heard of it. He was never taught. He didn't know. He just wanted to see the formation. So he told Krishna, take me to the army. And Krishna said, okay. He would take him to the, and Krishna said, okay, I will drive you to the army. But Arjuna said that, look, he would not fight them. He would not be the first person to shoot an arrow at them, because Arjuna said that, look, they are not, he said, I do not know them. They are not my enemy. So if they are not my enemy, if I don't even know them, I have no hostility towards them, how can I start a war? How can I kill them? The sin of killing would be on my head. The same thing that he had told Krishna when Krishna asked him to start the Mahabharata war. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, as we already know, we had talked about it before. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when Krishna asked Arjuna to shoot the first arrow and start the war, Arjuna had flatly refused. He said, he had told him that if the Kauravas attacked him, he would fight. He would not start a war, because the sins of the war would accrue to the one who started the fighting. The same thing he said here. He said, I don't know them. They are not my enemy. I am not going to kill them. I am not going to start a war. I am not going to start a war. Once they attack me, I will attack and kill them. But before that, I will not start a war. I will not make an attempt to kill them. So this is what he had said. Now, when Krishna took him to the formation, to the edge of the formation, from where he could have a look, the asuras attacked him. And when the asuras attacked him, he had no problem. He fought, and the fight went on. It became a very fierce kind of fight. And I do not want to go into any details, but it so happened that Arjuna was defeated in a fight, and he was taken prisoner. Krishna did not know this, and when Krishna was fighting, the same demon told Krishna that he knew where Arjuna was, and Krishna was going to kill him. When Krishna was going to kill him, and he said that, don't kill me, I will tell you where Arjuna was. So Krishna said, tell me where he is. So he took him to Krishna. He took Krishna to Arjuna. He told Krishna that, look, Arjuna is inside this well. There was a well, deserted, there was a well and he said that Arjuna is inside the well. So Krishna jumped into the well, not knowing that the demon had actually played a trick on him. So Krishna was on the well, nobody knew where Arjuna was. To cut a long story short, Hanuman, who was on the who was on the top of the chariot of Arjuna. We know that, Hanuman was on the chariot of Arjuna. Hanuman saved them both. So that's a long story, and the fight went on, and all these things happened, and the fight went on for the whole day, and they returned, and they found that Abhimanyu was dead. So at one point, Arjuna said that Arjuna was very upset, and in that mood he said that I know who were responsible for my son's death. It is my 4 Pandava brothers who are all cowards. These 4 brothers of mine, they were afraid of facing Karna in the battlefield. Therefore, they sent my son and had him killed. These are cowards, and I am going to kill each of them. Krishna pacified him. Krishna said, no, nobody is responsible for Abhimanyu's death, because Abhimanyu had to go to heaven, he had to go to Swarga, and right now he was fighting in Swarga with Udayaka Bandha, a demon. We have, I would like to remind you that Krishna, which we had discussed earlier in one of the earlier talks, Krishna took Arjuna to heaven, where Arjuna saw his son fighting the demon, and the rest of it you know, I don't have to repeat. His son could not recognize, Adi, who was Adi now, Adi could not recognize Arjuna. Krishna said the relationship of father and son had ended with his death, and Arjuna was disappointed and returned to the mortal world. And after returning to the mortal world, he took a vow that actually the person responsible for his son's death was Jayadratha, and he would kill Jayadratha before the sun set on the following day. That story we know, and we have already recounted the story earlier. So now if you look at it this way, then who was responsible for Abhimanyu's death? Was it Jayadratha? Were the 7 Maharathis who killed him? Actually, it was Krishna who orchestrated things in that way. Abhimanyu had to die, Abhimanyu had to be killed that day, so that he returned to his heavenly abode. And if Sahadev had told Krishna to remember his promise to Adi, and had he not been killed, he would have created havoc. So he had to be killed. So the point of this is that you see, that there are things happen in the mortal world, and in the cosmic world, at the cosmic level, the events are organized in a certain way. And Sarala's Mahabharata functions at 2 different levels. The narrative, Sarala's narrative, deals with things at the cosmic level. It also deals with things at the Laukik or the phenomenal world level. So both at the cosmic level and at the Laukik level. So that is at both levels, Sarala's narrative. Sarala's narrative functions at both levels, the cosmic and the Laukik, or the phenomenal world of experience of ours. So this is so we now know that now we can ask this question: if things have been decided elsewhere, if it is a predetermined world, in the sense that that things to happen in the world have already been decided the way they would happen, then what kind of implication? Then what implication does it have for the notion of karta, the doer? should we think that the 7 Rathis were responsible for should we now say that the 7 Rathis who killed Abhimanyu were actually guilty of that, were actually doers or actors who performed the action of killing? They were almost bound to do so. Things were decided elsewhere that Abhimanyu would die and the manner in which he would die. So things had been decided almost like that. So do we really hold them? To what extent can we say that they were the agents and they had performed the heinous karma, and because of the karma, sort of they should suffer or be condemned? So if things are predetermined, if we live in a predetermined world, then what is the question of, how do we look at the question of agency or the doer? So this question arises. Krishna is the one who orchestrated it. He did it because he had given the promise, that Abhimanyu would be born. There is one problem in this. There is something I don't understand this narrative, and let me share with you this. We know. I mean, there is a narrative purpose in there is both. There is a narrative purpose, namely that Krishna had to be given protection, therefore Ugratara had to be born. So Ugratara was born and Krishna got that protection. Ugratara was in Mathura. Krishna grew up in Gopapura, and that is how Ugratara's birth was important from the point of view of the narrative. But what is the purpose of Abhimanyu being born? So, why was he born to Subhadra? What is the purpose of his birth? I don't know. I'm not really sure what kind of narrative purpose Abhimanyu's birth serves, except probably that the Kurukshetra war took a particularly vicious and violent turn after Abhimanyu's death. Apart from this, I am not really quite sure what narrative purpose was solved by Krishna asking Adi to be born in the world, to stay in the world for 14 years and return to Swarga. But that is what it is. That is how Sarala narrates it. And as I said, one of the most important questions that arises is about the notion of karta, the notion of doer, and his responsibility, and his responsibility in a world that is predetermined. The same thing happened. Same thing happened with respect to Dussasana's killing. The same questions arise with respect to Dussasana's killing. Now, Dussasana had to die the way he died. Who was Dussasana? Dussasana in Satya Yuga was a Sudraka Brahma. He was the 14th Sudraka Brahma. When Adimata gave birth to these 14 Sudraka Brahmas, they wanted to satisfy their sexual urge with her, the mother. And Adimata was extremely angry, and in anger, out of her anger, emerged a goddess, a destructive goddess. Her name was Ketuka. Now, Adimata asked Ketuka to kill, to devour all the 14 Brahmas who had committed the crime of wanting to have sexual relations with their mother. And 13 Sudraka Brahmas were devoured, were killed, were devoured literally by Ketuka, by goddess Ketuka. The 14th one ran to Bhagavan Vishnu, and he sought protection from Vishnu, and Vishnu gave him protection. When Adimata went to Vishnu and told him that what he had committed and how he had insulted her, Vishnu said, look, I have given him protection. So that was Satya Yuga, the time the creation was taking place. So Vishnu said, I have given him protection, so he cannot be killed now. You will take your revenge in Dwapara Yuga. And then he was to be born as Dusasana. Goddess Ketuka was to be born as Draupadi, and that is how Draupadi would drink the blood of Dusasana after Bhima would kill him. So the revenge was taken after 2 yugas. Satya Yuga passed, Treta Yuga passed, and in Dwapara Yuga, Ketuka was born as Draupadi, and Dusasana was born. And Sudraka Brahma was born as Dusasana, and Draupadi had her revenge. Draupadi and Ketuka punished the Sudraka Brahma, and that is the story. So again the same thing. So Bhima killed Dusasana in a way that was absolutely terrible. You don't expect, one would really, one would find it very difficult to accept that no matter what, a brother would take a vow that he would kill his brother by tearing his wombs apart and to drink the blood of the brother. So that was Bhima's oath. So he would kill Dusasana and drink, tear his body, tear his body to pieces, and to drink the water and to drink the blood from his body, from his chest. So that was the kind of promise that he had taken, and we shudder to think of that kind of a promise. This is almost dehumanizing. But then, so nobody, of course, in the world of Sarala Mahabharata, no one really blamed Bhima for this. Bhima had taken an oath and he took revenge. Bhima had taken the other oath, that is namely to kill Duryodhana, and he broke Duryodhana's thigh, and that is how Duryodhana died. But in doing so, he had committed a grave sin. He had hit Duryodhana where in Gada Yuddha a person cannot be hit, the warrior cannot be hit. So it was a wrong, so he had adopted wrong tactics. He hit him the wrong way, and Duryodhana fell, and he had been condemned by that in Sarala Mahabharata. Balaram condemned him, and generally, in Sarala Mahabharata he stood condemned. Okay. Now, but no one in the world of Sarala Mahabharata condemned him for the way in which he killed Dusasana. He was not punished, except probably at the end when Yudhishthira gave him that punishment, but not for anything in particular. When they were going to Swarga, or when they were climbing the mountain Himalayas, to reach a vantage point from where they could see the Devas. As we know, we have talked about it before, Draupadi fell, and then Sahadeva, then Nakula, then Arjuna, and then Bhima fell. But Bhima did not really die like the others. Bhima was still able to follow Yudhishthira, but Yudhishthira thought that a person who had the inclination, who had a kind of violent disposition, and who was prone to anger and prone to and was so revengeful in nature, should not go to heaven without passing through death. So he invoked goddess Hingula. He invoked goddess Hingula to destroy Bhima, and that is how Bhima was destroyed. So if we can have a link, if at all we can sort of forge a link, and the link is not suggested explicitly in Sarala Mahabharata. So it is, so if we really try and connect things, we might find that for Bhima's terribly violent actions, he suffered, and he suffered like this. But let me repeat, this is not what Sarla has explicitly said about Bhima. That is, he committed things which were not acceptable, the way he killed Dussasana, the nature of that oath, the way he killed Duryodhana. So all this was sort of not acceptable, and he was not punished for any of these things. But if we think of what happened to him at the very end, and if we try and connect this, then we might say probably he was punished for this. But in any case, the story is the same. Ketuka had to take her revenge, and Dussasana had to be killed the way he was killed. Bhima was only instrumental. Ketuka had to take her revenge, and he had to die the way he died. And Dussasana was, had to die that way. So he was only so. To what extent can we say that Bhima was responsible, or Bhima was responsible for his action, or we condemn him for doing what he did? The issue arose not with respect to Bhima in Sala Mahabharata, but with respect to Draupadi. What happened was, when Bhima poured when Bhima poured Dussasana's blood on Draupadi's head, the blood trickled down her head and touched her mouth, and she had tasted that blood. It had touched her mouth. It was not that she was trying to drink her blood or something like that. Nothing of that kind. It just trickled down, and and that is how she tasted the blood. And then at that point of time, Vaivasutta Manu, who was listening to the story from sage Agasti, asked him, how come Draupadi drank blood? And then the story is told, as we know, the story that we just mentioned. So the death of the killing of Dussasana and the manner of the killing, in a way, was decided long ago. It was his karma. In Satyayug, the things that had happened, and the phala of the karma had to be experienced after 2 yugas. So karma phala has to be endured, if not immediately, maybe after yugas. So karma would, the consequences of karma can never remain unexperienced. If the karma is good, one enjoys the fruit of the good action. If the karma is bad, one enjoys the fruit of the bad action. So that had to be done. Take another example. The example of Pandavas' Vanavas. The Pandavas went on Vanavas for 12 years, and that also was, in a way, the Pandavas went on Vanavas for 12 years when Yudhishthira lost the game of dice. I think we have referred to this game of dice and the way it was played before, but let me repeat a little. So what had happened was this, that we know that it was Sahadev who was playing dice for both Duryodhana and Yudhishthira. And Sahadev knew, because he was the knower of the past, the present and the future, so he knew that Kichaka could be killed only by Bhima. So there were 2 more who could have killed Kichaka, but one of them was dead, namely Jarasandha, and the other would not. And it was implausible for the other to come and kill Kichaka, and the other person was Bhagwan Balaram. So there was no reason why they would be engaged in a kind of battle. So the only option is Bhima. So he was the 3rd person who could have killed Kichaka. So Bhima, but how does Bhima kill Kichaka? So they have to be brought together. So Pandavas of Vanavas will create an occasion for both of them to meet in a situation where Bhima would fight him. So it was Yudhishthira's idea that whoever lost the game of dice on that day would go to forest for 12 years. It would be on exile for 12 years. That was Yudhishthira's idea. It was not Duryodhana's idea. It was Shakuni's idea that that whoever went to forest for 12 years has to spend 1 year in incognito. He must that they must spend 1 year in incognito, and if during that 1 year they were found, then they would again go to forest for another 12 years and another year for the incognito, and this would happen like that. And in Sala Mahabharata, it is said that both Duryodhana and Yudhishthira were surprised at this condition. Both of them were surprised at the harshness of the condition. So it was not Duryodhana who initiated anything. It was not Duryodhana was not responsible for suggesting that the loser would go to the forest or would spend 1 year in incognito. These are not Duryodhana's suggestions. They all accepted this, and Sahadev was the one who played dice. And Sahadev ensured, and it was a very deliberate action, Sahadev ensured that the Pandavas lost, that Yudhishthira lost the game of dice, so that the Pandavas would go to the forest, and then they would stay a year in exile, and then during that year, a year in incognito, and during that year the situation would emerge, the situation would arise where Bhima and Kichaka would meet, and Bhima and Kichaka would die in the hands of Bhima. So Kichaka had to be killed. That was the cosmic purpose, and that had to be executed this way. Now, if this is what it is, what is the notion of agency? How can we hold Duryodhana responsible for what happened to the Pandavas, the 12 years in exile and all? Can we hold Shakuni responsible for this? It was all decided earlier. It was not decided at the cosmic level. Okay. So in Sala Mahabharata, the happenings are all predetermined. So in a predetermined, if the happenings are predetermined and if the world is predetermined like this, then how do we then how do we look at the question of agency? Who is responsible? Okay. Can we say somebody is to blame, that the person who thought he was the doer was actually the doer? The person who thought he was the doer was actually an instrument. And so these questions arise in Sala Mahabharata. So now the question is, as I have said before, the narrative runs at two different levels. One is the Laukika level and the other is the cosmic level. Why should we know what happens at the cosmic level? How, what narrative purpose does it serve? So let me try and answer this question. My answer to this question would be like this. When things happen in the world, we have talked about these incidents. Now, one would like to know why did things happen the way they did. As we know, in one case, Vaivasvata Manu interrupted the narrator, says Agasti, and asked him how come Draupadi drank blood, because she is a Parama Vaishnavi, and how could she taste blood? So this was something which was incongruous. This was something which he found difficult to make sense of. So he interrupted the sage and asked the question. And notice that the question had to be answered with reference to things happening at the cosmic level, because there was no explanation of this that would come from the narrative at the Laukika level. So the function of the cosmic level, the function of describing things at the cosmic level is to clarify, this way, is to clarify things happening in this world. We have, there is a story of Belal Sen, which we have referred to before. In Belal Sen, we know the story. As we know, Belal Sen was Bhima's son, he could have finished the war virtually very soon. I mean, he had an arrow with which he could have killed anyone, and he could have finished the war very early, almost in moments. But Krishna wanted the war to take place for a longer time, 18 days, and he asked Belal Sen for his head, and Belal Sen gave him his head. All that story we know, and this is not there in Vyasa Mahabharata to repeat. This is not there in Vyasa Mahabharata. This is there in Sarala Mahabharata, and in some other regional language Mahabharatas as well. So Krishna said that give me your head as a ritual dana to me. So Belal Sen happily gives him his head, but tells him that I want to see the war. And Krishna said that you will remain alive. He perched him, he sat him on the top of a pillar at a vantage point in the battlefield, so that he could see what was happening in the war. We have talked about it before. Now, as the severed head was going in the sort of sky to reach the top of, to reach its destination where it would remain for the entire duration of the war, it was singing the name of Hari, 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 Hari. It was singing the name of Hari. So Vaibhasutta Munu asked, how could a severed head talk? So the answer to this question was given again with reference to things that had happened in the past in the other, in the other worlds. And we have used the general term cosmic level for this. So this event, so Belal Sen had a past, and things had happened in the past in another age, in another yuga, in another world, and by referring to what had happened in the other world, Vaibhasutta Manu could explain how such an unbelievable thing happened. The severed head living and talking. The severed head, chanting the name of the Lord. How could this happen? So reference to the other world, reference to the past, for which I have used the term things happening at the cosmic level, the narrative functioning at the cosmic level. Now, this has helped the narrative in the following way, that whenever there have been incongruences, whenever something has arisen, whenever something has happened, the explanation of which is not quite clear, so reference has to be made to things in the past, in the happening in some other world or at some other time, to clarify the matter. This is important because of particular kind of theology in which this is embedded. Why is an avatar born? Why does Narayan take avatar? And why do humans take birth? What is the basis of rebirth? What is the basis of rebirth? And what is the basis of Bhagavan taking avatar? Rebirth is necessary, or rebirth becomes necessary because of karma. So sometimes the fruits of the karma are not experienced immediately or during one's lifetime, but they cannot be escaped. Karma would chase one in births after births after births across aeons and aeons and aeons. So one had to experience the consequence of one's karma. So that is one. The other, when it comes to avatar, Narayana never took avatar because of karma. There was no karma that he did because of which he had to take avatar. That doesn't apply to him. But why does he take avatar? He takes avatar to set the world right in some sense, that there is a kind of disorder takes place, and to save the and Bhu Devi, the mother goddess, sorry, and Bhu Devi, the goddess of the earth goddess, prays to the Lord to save and redeem the world. Okay, that is why Narayana is born. Narayana is not born because of karma. And so when he takes avatar to set the cosmic balance right, to set the world in order. That is and that is a vision of Srimad Bhagavata, and that is a vision that you find in Sarala Mahabharata, in Srimad Bhagavata, and you find that in Sarala Mahabharata. The story has been incorporated into Sarala Mahabharata. Bhagavan Narayana says that that I plucked when the earth goddess came, Bhu Devi came and prayed to him to save the world, to save her, and set the balance right, set the cosmic balance right. So what he did was he plucked two hairs, one black and one white, from his body, and out of those hairs were manifest, from these hairs, from those two hairs were manifest Balaram and Krishna, and their job, and that was avatar, and they took avatar like that, and their job was to set the cosmic balance right in the world. Sometimes an avatar gives assurance to somebody or makes a promise to someone that he would be reborn and would fulfill their desires. That is the story of the Sabara Jara who killed Krishna. Krishna as Ram had told Angada that he would be born as Krishna in Dwapar Yuga, and Angada as Jara could take revenge on him for what he had done in Ram Avatar, namely killing Bali, his father. There was always a kind of discontent in Angada that he could not avenge his father's death. So when Ram knew this, Ram told him not to worry. In another aeon, in another time, he would be born. He would take a different avatar, and he would be able to take that revenge on him at that time. So Bhagavan takes avatar for reasons like this, to set the cosmic balance right and to fulfill his promises made to someone or the other in certain existence of his, and which he could not fulfill in that avatar, and that ought to be fulfilled in the subsequent avatar. So that is the logic. So that is how he is born. So if we have to make, for all these, reference to the cosmic level becomes necessary in the narrative, and that is why I think if the two narratives run parallel, there is a narrative purpose. That if Sarala Mahabharata narrated events at two different levels, namely the cosmic and Laukik, there is a purpose. The purpose is that the events in the Laukik narrative could be clarified, could be explained, could be explicated with reference to the things that happened at the cosmic level. And that simply is a matter of what was the past, how the karmic cycle or how the karmic theory functioned. That is at one level. At the other level, the purpose of the avatars. So this has a kind of, this has a definitely significant purpose. Now, coming to the other question. So there are people, there are characters in Sarala Mahabharata who knew what was going to happen. Yudhishthira always blamed at the time of when they were in the Himalayas and Sahadev fell, Yudhishthira told Bhima to leave Sahadev there and not to think about Sahadev's death or Sahadev falling, because Sahadev was a sinner. How was he a sinner? Because he had the knowledge of the past, present and the future. We have already referred to this earlier. He had the knowledge of the past, present and the future, but he would keep mum. He would not say anything. Had he told them what was going to happen, probably the war might not have taken place. Things would have been different. So he held him responsible. But that is not really the case. Yudhishthira knew what was going to happen. If Sahadev did not tell him, somebody else had told him, namely Bharata. There is a character called Bharata in Sala Mahabharata, from whom Yudhishthira had known what would happen in the Mahabharata war, that he would win, that his brother should be killed. So he knew that. Similarly, from Sudeshna, Virata's wife, Sahadev and Krishna had known what was going to happen in the Mahabharata war. There are other characters, who would tell that we know what would happen in the war. On the 10th day, Bhishma would fall, etc., etc. So they knew what was going to happen. Okay. So when they knew what was going to happen, when they knew that things were already decided, what was their role? This question we had raised before, but I would say that in Sarala's narrative, the knowledge as to what was going to happen did not have any impact on the way the characters or the way the characters functioned. For example, Bhishma knew that Krishna was Narayana himself, but that did not prevent him to promise to Duryodhana that he would destroy the Pandavas in a war, knowing that Krishna was going to protect the Pandavas. So he said that. So similar examples can be given. There are lots of examples can be given like that. That is, and look at Arjuna himself. He went. He knew that his son was, that the one who considered his son was no more his son. But he came and decided to take revenge. What are the basis of taking revenge? When he knew that, when he knew what he knew. And when Krishna had told him that his son had to be killed because he had to fight a demon in heaven. So after you have the knowledge of things, after you know things, that knowledge does not have any impact in the way we think about the world, we think about ourselves, and the way we interact with others. We perform our karma. That knowledge may be in the background. Some people might know. Sahadev, for example, in Mahabharata, in Sarala Mahabharata, both Sahadev and Shakuni knew. Both Sahadev and Shakuni knew what was going to happen. And Shakuni, but at the same time, none of them behaved, none of them conducted themselves in a manner that would suggest that their knowledge had interfered with the way in which they thought of action, or they thought of their lives and the way go back. Now the fact that Shakuni and Sahadev knew what was going to happen did not have any impact on the way they decided to live and they decided to conduct themselves. So to sum up these questions, the two important questions that we raised are the following. One, what narrative purpose is solved by talking about things that happen at the cosmic level, that the world is predetermined. Now we suggested that it clarifies matters that happen at the Lokik level. Whenever at the Lokik level there are things that happen which appear to be incongruous, we look for an explanation of that, and we find it either in the karma theory or in the theory of avatars, and for both some other level of narrative has to be posited, and we have called it the cosmic level. And the second thing is, if you know what is going to happen, if you have the knowledge, does it have any impact on the way we live our lives? The answer to this in Sala Mahabharata is no, it does not. So knowledge is at one level, we know, and the way we decide to live is at another level. And because we decide to live the way we want to, because we decide to live the way, because we decide to live according to our own insights, according to our own knowledge, according to our own inclinations, then we become, then we are caught in the web of karma. So we stop here, and thank you very much.